Introduction. Unveiling the spectrum of BDSM. BDSM, an acronym for Bondage, Discipline, Dominance, Submission, Sadism, and Masochism, is a multifaceted world where the boundaries of pain and pleasure blur. This intricate tapestry of human sexuality has evolved through centuries, influenced by cultural, social, and psychological factors. Understanding the history of BDSM requires delving into ancient rituals, medieval practices, the writings of controversial figures, and the modern subcultures that celebrate consensual power exchanges. Ancient beginnings, pain and pleasure intertwined. The roots of BDSM can be traced back to ancient civilizations, where rituals and cultural practices often intertwined pain and pleasure. In ancient Mesopotamia, the goddess Inanna, also known as Ishtar, was venerated through rituals that included both sacred prostitution and physical discipline. Inanna's descent into the underworld and her subsequent return was a myth that symbolized the cyclical nature of life, death, and rebirth. To honor Inanna, devotees engaged in rituals that involved both pleasure and pain, reflecting the duality of the goddess herself. Ancient Greece Dionysian mysteries. Similarly, in ancient Greece, the concept of dominance and submission was explored in both philosophical and physical realms. The Greek god Dionysus, associated with wine, fertility, and ritual madness, was worshipped through ecstatic rituals that included flagellation and other forms of physical endurance. These rites were believed to bring worshippers closer to the divine by transcending ordinary consciousness, highlighting the intersection of pain, pleasure, and spiritual release. The Middle Ages, shadows and secrecy, the Church and flagellation. During the Middle Ages, the practice of BDSM-like activities took on a more clandestine character due to the stringent moral and religious codes of the time. However, evidence suggests that flagellation was used both as a form of penance and sexual gratification. The Catholic Church, while condemning overt sexual practices, paradoxically promoted flagellation as a means of spiritual purification. Flagellant movements, where individuals would publicly whip themselves to atone for sins, became widespread, intertwining religious fervor with the physical act of receiving pain. Courtly love and chivalry. The concept of courtly love in medieval Europe introduced elements of dominance and submission in a more socially acceptable guise. Knights performed acts of chivalry and devotion to their often unattainable ladies, creating a dynamic of power and servitude. This romantic ideal emphasized the knight's loyalty and willingness to endure hardship for the sake of his beloved, paralleling the modern BDSM principles of devotion and consensual power exchange. The Renaissance and Enlightenment were times of emerging fantasies. The divine Marquis de Sade, became one of the most provocative figures of the 18th century. Born into a noble family in Paris in 1740, de Sade's life was marked by scandal, imprisonment, and a relentless exploration of the darkest corners of human desire. His early life was one of privilege, but his education and upbringing exposed him to the libertine philosophies of the time. Influenced by the works of Enlightenment thinkers such as Voltaire and Rousseau, de Sade developed a complex view of human nature that challenged conventional morality. His writings, including Justine and the 120 Days of Sodom, detailed extreme forms of sexual dominance and sadism, exploring themes of cruelty, power, and the subjugation of others. De Sade's philosophy was rooted in the belief that true freedom could only be achieved through the rejection of societal norms and moral constraints. He argued that the pursuit of pleasure, regardless of its moral implications, was the highest goal of human existence. This radical view placed him at odds with the authorities of his time, leading to multiple imprisonments and a lasting legacy as one of the most controversial figures in the history of sexuality. Despite the shocking nature of his works, de Sade's influence on the understanding of sadomasochism cannot be overstated. His name became synonymous with the concept of sadism, and his exploration of power dynamics laid the groundwork for modern BDSM practices. While his writings were often condemned for their explicit content, they also forced society to confront the complexities of human desire and the interplay between pain and pleasure. At the same time, The term Masochism was derived from the works of Leopold von Sacher-Masoch, an Austrian writer whose 1870 novel Venus in Furs depicted a man who derives pleasure from submitting to a dominant woman. Sacher-Masoch's exploration of consensual submission and the psychological aspects of sexual relationships provided a counterpoint to de Sade's focus on dominance and cruelty. Together, their works laid the foundation for understanding the dual aspects of sadomasochism in human sexuality. The Victorian Era behind closed doors. This era, known for its strict moral codes and emphasis on propriety, also had a hidden undercurrent of BDSM practices. Despite the outward appearance of sexual repression, underground communities flourished, and fetishistic behaviors were often explored in private. Corsets, tight lacing, and other restrictive clothing became both fashion statements and symbols of control and submission. Erotic literature, such as The Pearl, a clandestine magazine from the 1870s, contained explicit stories of bondage, discipline, and fetishism. These publications catered to a growing interest in sexual exploration, providing a safe outlet for individuals to indulge their fantasies. Private clubs and societies also emerged, where members could engage in BDSM activities away from the prying eyes of Victorian society. The 20th century, from pathology to subculture. Psychological perspectives, Freud and beyond. The early 20th century saw BDSM practices beginning to be studied more seriously within the field of psychology. Sigmund Freud's theories on human sexuality included discussions on sadomasochism, suggesting that these behaviors were part of the broader spectrum of human sexual expression. Freud proposed that sadomasochistic tendencies were rooted in childhood experiences and the unconscious mind, paving the way for a more nuanced understanding of BDSM. The rise of underground communities. The 1940s and 1950s witnessed the rise of underground BDSM communities, particularly in the United States and Europe. During this time, Betty Page became an iconic figure, modeling in bondage-themed photos that challenged societal norms and hinted at the burgeoning subculture. Her images, characterized by playful yet provocative poses, helped to normalize BDSM imagery and inspire future generations of kink enthusiasts. The sexual revolution and liberation. The 1960s and 1970s marked a significant shift with the sexual revolution, which challenged traditional views on sexuality and promoted greater freedom of expression. BDSM began to emerge from the shadows, with organizations such as the Society of Janus, founded in 1974 in San Francisco, providing a safe space for individuals to explore and discuss their interests. The publication of The Story of O in 1954, a novel depicting the consensual submission of a woman, further brought BDSM themes into mainstream consciousness. The 1980s and 1990s, community and education, organized communities and support networks. The 1980s and 1990s saw the formation of more organized BDSM communities and educational resources. The advent of the internet played a crucial role in connecting like-minded individuals and disseminating information. The National Leather Association and the Leather Archives and Museum, established in Chicago in 1991, became important institutions in preserving the history and culture of BDSM. Publications and resources. Publications like Screw the Roses, Send Me the Thorns, 1995, and the establishment of online forums provided accessible information on safe, sane, and consensual practices. Workshops, conventions, and support groups flourished, emphasizing the importance of consent and communication. These developments helped to demystify BDSM and promote a culture of safety and respect within the community. The 21st century acceptance and mainstream visibility. The impact of 50 Shades of Grey. In the 21st century, BDSM has become more visible and accepted within mainstream culture. The publication of E.L. James's 50 Shades of Grey trilogy, 2011 to 2012, brought BDSM themes to a global audience, sparking widespread interest and dialogue. While the books received criticism for their portrayal of BDSM, they undeniably contributed to the normalization of kink and alternative sexual practices, social media, and online communities. The rise of social media and online communities has further demystified BDSM, allowing for more open discussion and education. Platforms like FetLife provide a space for individuals to connect, share experiences, and learn from one another. Online resources and forums have made it easier than ever for newcomers to explore BDSM safely and responsibly, fostering a sense of community and belonging. Conclusion: the ever-evolving landscape. The history of BDSM is a rich and complex tapestry, woven from ancient rituals, literary explorations, clandestine practices, and the ongoing struggle for acceptance and understanding. Today, BDSM is recognized not merely as a set of sexual practices, but as a legitimate expression of human sexuality, encompassing a diverse range of identities and experiences. As society continues to evolve, the future of BDSM looks promising, with greater emphasis on education, consent, and the celebration of diversity within the community. From ancient temples to modern playrooms, the journey of BDSM is a testament to the enduring power of human desire and the infinite ways it can be expressed.